All right, so I've started recording now. We're at a point where we're going to be starting to get ready for the test. Um, I have some review activities that we'll do with you guys. Um, I'm trying to figure out how to do it online with you. I'm not really sure yet. I'm still working on it in my head, right? So we have some review stuff that we're going to do, but today what I want you to do is I want you to go over, I want to go over the test with you of what the test is going to look like and what's the format of the test and everything. All right, give me a number from 0 to 5. How much anxiety do you have about my test? 5 meaning like you feel like you might vomit on the day of the test. 0 means like you feel no anxiety at all, like you are super confident. How much anxiety do you feel about my test? Okay. All right. All right. All right. So you guys are moderately anxious. Tiffany's feeling pretty confident. That's pretty good. All right. So that's good. All right. So if you look on, I'm going to share my screen, but this is all available for you on Canvas as well. So if you go to Canvas, where are we here? Okay. So if you go to Canvas, if you look in the modules on Canvas now, there's a review module, a test prep module. Okay. This first is a page of a practice test. So this is a test that came from previous, this is like 2018 test, the 2018 test. This is an actual test. This is like not one that I made up. It's an actual test. All right. I want to go through this. You have 3 papers, and I'm going to go through this in reverse order real quick. Okay. Because I think the first paper 1 is the trickiest one. So I want to get the 2 easy ones out of the way first, and then we'll look at the tricky one last. Okay, fair enough? Okay, so I'm looking at paper 3. Okay, here's paper 3. Come on now. Come on, internet. You can do it. There we go. Good boy. All right, so paper 3 is your history of the Americas. Now, if you guys are like the in-person students, you guys are going to think that this is the one that's giving you the most stress, right? Because this is the one that's about last year's classes. So some of the students say they forgot the things from last year, and some of the students say they were never really taught it very well, right? And then COVID also cut you off partly through, right? And so this is the one that I've had the most students give me anxiety about, that they say that they have anxiety. Give me a thumbs up if you think that is mostly a true statement for you guys. Yeah, okay. All right, so let's look at this one. I think that your anxiety will go away pretty quick as soon as you start looking at this. Okay, so first off, how much time do you have? 2.5 hours. Okay, that's a long time. 2.5 hours. And how many questions do you have to answer? Mike, how many questions are you answering? All right, this works better if you guys unmute yourself so we can have a conversation. Unless you're somewhere loud, keep yourself unmuted so we can have a conversation. I don't want to have to wait 30 seconds for every one of you to unmute yourselves. Elha, Raul, Yash. Tiffany, I know your house is always loud, so we'll keep you on mute unless you're going to chime in. Okay, so how many questions do you have to answer?
Any 3.
3. Any 3, okay? And the history of the Americas is anything on this map, okay? So from the tippity top of Canada to the bottom of Chile, right? This is where a lot of you guys get the anxiety because you're like, oh my God, I didn't study any of that. The only thing I studied is the United States, right? Okay, well, let's look through these. Any 3 questions. You can pick any of these. And so you can look through some of these and you'll see some of these are going to be very difficult for you, right? The relationship between religious and political powers in an indigenous American culture, that seems very hard. That seems like something that you guys won't be qualified for. But as you start going down here, right, you're going to start getting things that you absolutely did cover. Slavery in the New World, independence movements. This is like the American independence, nation building, the birth of the United States, the Civil War, the development of modern nations, Americas and global affairs, Mexican Revolution you didn't do, but Great Depression you did, Second World War you did, right? Political developments, Cold War, and look at here, civil rights and social movements in Americas, right? I think we have a winner, right? My class absolutely covered this. Okay, look at question 33. Ilha, read 33 for us.
Evaluate the impact of U.S. Supreme Court decisions on ending segregation in education between 1955 and 1965.
Hey, all right, if you can't answer that question after my class, then I don't know what you've been doing. All right, that is literally a question I've given you on a previous test, right? Okay, we didn't talk too much about feminist movements in my class, but if you look through all of these things, you're going to see that there's a lot of these questions that you absolutely can answer, right? Scroll through them. If you scroll through here, right? How many of you feel confident that you can answer 31?
Not.
No? Okay.
Not
How
me.
about 32? Give me a thumbs up if you think you can handle 32. Cold War, you guys didn't do, okay? 33, you guys can do 33, right?
Yup.
Thumbs up for 33. 34, maybe you can do, I'm not sure what else, right? Okay, so let's move backwards here, right? Quiet revolution, you're not gonna get. So here we go. Compare and contrast the social policies of any two leaders of the United States during the, I can't see it, your face is fine. During the period of 1945 to 1980. Can you compare any two leaders of the United States? Okay, go back.
It's not, it doesn't mean like strictly presidents or.
It doesn't mean presidents necessarily. Like you could compare like John F. Kennedy and like Eugene McCarthy, if you want to talk about like McCarthyism or something like that. Yeah, you could. You could, right? Let's go. Second World War. To what extent were attempts at hemispheric cooperation successful prior and during the Second World War? Examine the reasons for the nature of involvement of one country, the Americas. There we go, 26. You guys can do 26?
Yeah, definitely.
26 is pretty easy, right? Okay. Examine the social and cultural impact of the Great Depression in one country. Can you do 24?
Yes.
You should be able to do 24 pretty easy, right? 23 will be hard because you guys don't have two countries, right? How about effects of Cuba on the Spanish-American War? You guys should be able to do that one, right? You could do railway expansion, help modernize two countries. Let's see, reference to one country. To an extent where the aims of progressivism achieved by 1929. You should be able to do that one too, right? Number 18, you should be able to do that one. How about number 16? That's again, my class again, right? Gives you number 16. Okay, I think you guys can probably do number 15 as well. Right? How many of you guys are pretty confident that you can find 3 questions in here?
Very confident.
Very confident. The test is designed for Americans who only study the United States, right? Of all of the different regions that we have in here, there's 36. There's 36 questions, right? So that means that there's what, 15, what's 36 divided by 2? 18, right? So that means there's, of the 18 categories, I think 8 of them are US. 8 or 9 of them are US. Okay. Now what it's looking for here is a 5-paragraph essay. It wants you to write 3 5-paragraph essays on any 3 questions in here. Okay. And it's basically exactly what I asked you to do on the Ireland test. Right? I asked you to write 3 essays. I only gave you an hour and a half, and they're giving you 2.5 hours.
Is it handwritten?
Yes, it is. It is handwritten. They'll give you a printout booklet and then a booklet that you write in, right? And then you'll just put a number, like you're going to answer number 13, and then you answer your question. And then the next page, number 22, ask the question. You can pick any of these, and you can pick 2 from the same category if you want. You can pick 2 from the same category. You can pick 1 from 3 categories. Okay.
I had a question.
Yeah, Mike.
So do the categories not change and only the questions, or how does that work?
Okay, so the categories are the same every year. All right, we're getting feedback on something. I don't know. Okay, so the categories are the same every year. Maybe we have to mute you guys. You guys hear the echo?
Yeah.
Is it Raul? No, it wasn't Raul. It's got to be Ilha or Yash. Are we? All right, there we go. Okay. So the categories are the same every year. The questions just change, right? So every year there's a religion in the New World. Every year there's a colonial government in the New World. Every year there's a development of modern nations. Every year. Those are the categories that IB defines, and they say every teacher needs to do these categories. And they say every teacher needs to cover 3 categories, right? And then we just choose to teach you the AP US curriculum, which covers like 5 categories. Cool. Do you have any other questions about this paper?
Nope.
Okay. How many of you guys feel more confident about this?
Definitely me.
More confident? Okay. All right. Let's look at number 2. This is the one that also causes some anxiety for people. It's loading up here. So there's one thing that I want to point out to you guys about the difference between an IB test and an AP test. Okay. At this point, you guys have taken AP Geography, AP Government, AP US History, plus you've probably also taken an AP Science of some kind, probably. You've probably also taken an AP Literature or English, right? Like you've taken a bunch of AP exams. AP exams are designed to be like a trivia test, okay? Where the AP company, the company AP, right? They tell teachers and they say, you're gonna teach AP US History. Here are the 500 things that we think are important. And then the AP teacher takes those 500 things, puts them onto a calendar and teaches them, right? And so AP is highly, highly prescriptive that way. IB is different. IB says, we want you to cover this broad topic. And with that broad topic, we want you to, explore it how you want to explore it. Right? And so the IB test is very, very different. It isn't like a trivia test. It's more like some wise old guy standing underneath an oak tree telling you say everything you know. Right? Okay, so this next one is the history paper 2. So this is the world topics paper. Okay. So how many questions?
Is it 3 again, or?
Right here.
Oh, 2.
Yep. So 2 questions. How much time?
30, which is a lot.
An hour and 30 minutes, right? On all of my tests that I've given you 2 questions, I've only given you 60 minutes. The longest I've ever given you is 60 minutes, right? So again, it's pretty quick. What you need to be aware of is the 4 regions in this case. A lot of the questions are compare 2 countries from different regions, right? The IB defines that the world is in these 4 regions. So region 1 is the Americas. Region 2 is Europe, which includes Russia. Region 3 is Africa and the Middle East. Okay. And region 4 is Asia and the Pacific. Those are the 4 regions. So you need to be able to compare countries in any 2 regions. Here's the deal. We covered the United States, South Africa, India, and Ireland, one from every region. As long as you stick to the countries we've covered in class, you are guaranteed to be okay, right? The only thing that comes into a problem is if you decide to write about India and Pakistan, right? Don't do that because India and Pakistan are in the same region. So that's no good. You don't want to do that, right? But if you do India and Ireland, we're good. India, United States, we're good. South Africa and Ireland, we're good. United States and South Africa, we're good, right? Any other combo is good, okay? Now, all of these ones, which of these topics did I choose? Do you know what the names of my topics are? Do you have the topics up here?
I saw independence movement somewhere.
Independence movements, right? Here's independence movements, topic 8. What's the other topic I chose?
Democratic states looks like one.
Yep. Okay, I chose to teach you guys topic 8 and topic 9. Those are the two topics that I've been choosing, right? So it's intended that you answer 1 from 8 and 1 from 9. Okay, you have to pick any two and they have to be from different topics. Okay, so it's intended that you pick 1 from 8 and 1 from 9. Okay, so independence movements, you would answer this about India or South Africa or Ireland, right? Can you use the United States for this one? No, because the United States gains its independence before 1800. So no United States for this one. Okay. All right. So Raul, read question 15 for us.
Evaluate the importance of a war as a cause or catalyst for two independence movements, each chosen from a different region.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Ilha, what two countries and what wars are you going to choose for this one?
Probably South Africa and maybe Ireland, I guess.
South Africa and Ireland. Good. And what wars?
South Africa, there's a lot. You could probably do like either the world wars for both of them, or like World War II for Ireland, and then one of either a world war or like maybe a Boer War for like South Africa.
Okay. So you absolutely could do World War II for any of the countries, and you can absolutely do World War I for any of the countries, right? You do. I think the easiest one for me would be probably World War I for both India and Ireland, right? That seems like the low-hanging fruit, the easy one, right? Yash, which two countries and which two wars do you want to do on this one?
I was thinking probably India and South Africa, and I was probably going to go along with World War II over World War I, probably.
Okay, you could do both. I mean, World War I or World War II is fine, right? And they both had very similar effects on India and South Africa, very similar, right? Okay. Okay, let's look at number 16. Tiffany, can you read 16 for us?
Greatest challenges facing newly independent states were economic. With reference to one newly independent state, to what extent do you agree with this statement?
Okay. All right. So Raul, answer this question for India.
I'm sorry. I spaced out. Which one? She just read 16?
She read 16. So the first thing we have to do is we have to determine how much we agree with this statement. So with India, do we mostly agree with the statement or mostly disagree with the statement?
Well,
Everybody,
I think
give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. Mostly agree, mostly disagree. Tiffany says no.
we're talking about just India, right? With
Just
this?
India. We'll do India, we'll do Ireland, we'll do South Africa, right? So just India, okay. All right, so all of you guys seem to think that this statement is mostly not true for India, right? So Raul, what makes you say it's not true?
Because the kind of most immediate problem after independence was just the conflict between Muslims and Indians, and it's not really a religious conflict like solely, but as more like identity, as we talked about in Ireland, and not quite so economic, I would think.
Okay, I think that's a pretty strong argument, right? I think that we can pretty clearly see that India's earliest problems as a newly independent country are not really economic. They're more like ethnic identity country problems, right? Okay, Yash, what else could you add? If you're not going to talk about Muslims versus Hindus, what else could you say?
You could talk about political parties, I guess. Um, yeah, and how all of that didn't end up working so well with. Well, I guess that's a little bit after independence, but I think it would still work.
Okay, it could be political challenges, right? I'm not sure that's the best answer. I think Hindu Muslim is a better answer, right? But what else is a really good answer? What else was a big point of conflict for India in those first couple of years, those first, decade or so? How about you, Tiff? What else could you say? Tiff, you're muted still.
I'm not sure.
Oh, you guys all have spring break brain.
Yeah.
You got spring break brain, right? Raul gave us the easiest answer, but I think you could also make an answer for language. Language is a real problem, right? We had a lot of language conflicts in the beginning, right? I think the other one is sectarian issues, right? Like you're dealing with the separation of Pakistan and India, and you're dealing with like Kashmir and the outbreak of violence with sectarian issues. You're also dealing with the Sikhs who want some independence as well, right? So I think you could have ethnic conflict between the Hindus and Muslims, religious conflict with Hindus and Muslims, linguistic conflict with like 5 different groups, sectarian conflict with Pakistan and Kashmir, and also Hyderabad as well, right? Okay, so let's answer the question, Mike. Let's answer the question now using Ireland. First, everybody give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. We mostly agree or mostly disagree with the statement in regards to Ireland.
Wait,
Mike
newly
disagrees.
independent.
For newly independent Ireland, was Ireland mostly facing economic challenges or something else? Yash agrees mostly. What else? Come on, guys. Give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Ilha says mostly yes. Raul and Tiffany say mostly no. Mike is still thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Yash, let's have you take this answer. Mike's still thinking. All right, so Yash, you say yes, this is mostly true for Ireland, right? What's your evidence?
Well, I mean, a lot of the issues that Ireland had to be resolved through like the European Union, which helped like fix all the economic problems that Ireland had. And then you could also talk about the division between where like the manufacturing is going on in Ireland, how that relates to their economic output and stuff like that.
Okay. We need to be careful. When does Ireland become independent?
Is it with the Republic of Ireland?
Well, you would have to define when Ireland is newly independent, right? In my mind, I would say Ireland is independent in the 1920s because it's mostly independent in the 1920s, but it's 100% independent at the end of the 30s, right? So you have to kind of define that in your essay, right? We have all of our countries are getting kind of like incremental independence as we go, right? And so you have to kind of be mindful of that. So what are the economic challenges that Ireland's facing in the 1920s and 30s? Yeah, Ilha, what do you think?
Well, like starting off, it's like a new country, so it doesn't have like a fully stable economy yet. And there's like the Great Depression also hitting everyone like near the 1930s, a bit later.
Right.
Then just like there were like a lot of previous like issues with like economic issues in Ireland, so like kind of continued. And then I think like the Anglo-Irish trade war also like kind of hurt.
Okay. We're looking at like Ilha. I think all of that's good. You'd need to have some details that you're going to add into an essay, of course. Right? But like Cosgrave is going to spend the entire 20s dealing with economics, trying to lure businesses into Ireland and stuff, right? And then Dev is going to spend the entire 30s and 40s trying to economically grow the country, right? And then once it's independent after World War II, then we're going to get a big economic growth with the Marshall Plan and eventually the EU or EEC membership and stuff like that, right? I think Ireland pretty clearly had economic problems as their number one issue, right? I think pretty clearly they did. Okay, let's answer the question for South Africa. First, everyone give me a thumbs up or thumbs down. South Africa's primary issue is economic. Thumbs up, yes. Thumbs down, no. Mostly yes. You guys are all saying yes. Okay. All right. The first thing I want to point out here is, when does South Africa gain its independence? Remember, it's in increments, right? When does South Africa gain its independence? It gains mostly independence, like 60% independence in the 1900s after the Boer War, the second Boer War. And then it gains total independence right before World War II, with World War II, right? Okay, so what are the economic problems that South Africa is facing? If we're going to say this is mostly economic, what's the economic issues? We're dealing with the teens, 19-teens, 1920s, 1930s.
I think we talked a lot about how the other countries didn't want to participate with South Africa because of like the issues that it had been dealing with. So one of their main issues was trying to get people to actually invest in their country.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely a problem for South Africa, right? Definitely. What else? Where is South Africa getting all its money?
The mines.
The mines, right? So if you're going to talk about economics of South Africa, you have to talk about the mines. The only thing you can mention, really, right? And so they're going to spend the entire 1920s dealing with like labor unions and trying to turn the labor unions to be against race as opposed to against economics, you know, and they're trying to get control of those, you know, mines and trying to bring in enough labor and stuff, right? All of that is an economic problem. I think I might make an argument that South Africa's biggest problem is a race problem, not an economic problem, because their priority is turning the labor unions against race, right? But you can make the argument the other way too, right? If Yash makes the argument that he just made, you're fine. You can get 100%, right? With all of these tests, just like my tests all year long, your answer doesn't matter as much as the fact that you're stringing together evidence that makes sense, right? You don't have to agree with me. You never have to agree with me if you have evidence, right? Your evidence is fine. If your evidence, you know, the question is designed for you to argue both sides. Cool? Does that make sense? Okay, let's go to question number 17. All right, Tiffany, you read 17 for us?
Compare and contrast the conditions that encourage the demand for democratic reform in two states, each chosen from a different region.
Okay. When it says state, what does it mean? Does it mean California and Alabama? No. What does it mean?
A nation, a country.
Countries, right? We're the only country in the world that doesn't use the word states, right? Because we use it to talk about things like Delaware, right? And so So in this case, the state is India, Ireland, South Africa, United States. Now, for this topic 9, can I use the United States?
Yes.
100% yes, you can. Right? All right. So, all right. Tiffany says, compare and contrast the conditions that encourage democratic reform in 2 states. All right. Give me your 2 states. Your 2 states, and what are you going to do? All right. So Raul, give me your 2 states that you want to do.
Let's do Ireland and America.
Ireland and the United
United
States.
States. Yeah.
Okay. Ireland and the United States. And what encouraged the demand for democratic reform? How are you going to compare them?
So with so compare them. Ireland had a lot of violence so America had people like Martin Luther King who wanted the democratic reform, and he was fighting for it peacefully. But Ireland, there were such things as there was like bombings and riots, and not so much peaceful conditions pushing for that.
Right. I think you'd want to, I think in that case, you'd want to compare who's doing the violence, right? Because the American movement was not violence free, right?
Yeah.
Who was
Right.
committing violence in the United States?
The police.
A lot of it,
And-
like Southern police, like Alabama police and stuff, right? And who else?
And just white men and the KKK and just groups of white people.
Paramilitary groups like the KKK, right? Compare that to the violence in North Ireland.
It's kind of both, but a lot of it is
Police.
again the police, the Protestant police, and then the people like the IRA and just like children, like teenage children, kind of
Sure.
throwing Molotovs at each other.
So in Ireland, we have police violence, right? In both. And then in both we have paramilitary violence. The difference is that Ireland had 2 sides of paramilitary violence and the United States had 1.
Right.
Right? Okay, I think that's a perfectly wonderful essay. I think that's fine. You can get 100% on that essay, right? That's not the easiest answer though. What's the easiest answer to 17? Like, don't overthink this. Like the countries that we've compared, what's the easiest answer for 17?
I guess you could talk about like Indira Gandhi in India.
You can. That feels more difficult than the easiest answer.
Maybe like race conflicts in the US and South Africa.
Oh,
There we go. Yeah, that's the easiest answer. Come on now, right? Blacks voting in America, blacks voting in South Africa. Boom, the class is ready-made for this question, right? I think, Raul, you're fine. You can choose that answer too, because I think the comparison of violence is good, right? But like blacks voting in America, blacks voting in South Africa, come on now. That's like the easy answer. The whole class is built for that answer, right? But you can absolutely compare Indira Gandhi as an authoritarian with like South African leaders as authoritarians, right? Something like that. I think that that's fine, right? Compare the authoritarianism of her, right? Or their reaction to her, and then the reaction to authoritarian South Africans, right? I think that's just a trickier answer to make, but it's not wrong. It's fine. It's just trickier. All right, you guys feel good about that question? All right, let's look at 18. 18, Mike, you want to read it for us?
sure. Government hearing echoing, whatever. Government policies in democratic states rarely affect the distribution of wealth. To what extent do you agree with this statement?
Okay. All right. So if we're going to answer this question for the United States, What do we say? Do we mostly agree or mostly disagree with the statement? We mostly agree that it does not affect distribution of wealth.
Oh, rarely. Huh?
Yeah. So Mike says it disagrees. It does affect the distribution of wealth. Okay. All right, Tiffany, answer this question for the United States. What do you think? Tiffany, are you there?
Yeah, sorry.
Yep.
Sorry, I don't know why the question's not reading in my brain. Like
Say it
I'm
again?
reading it, I don't understand it. I don't know.
Let's deal with distribution of wealth. Some of the students in the afternoon were having a problem with this term. What's the difference between wealth and income?
Oh, is it wealth something that you already, I guess, inherit or whatever, like family money, and income is just like what you're making working.
Yeah, that's pretty good, right? Wealth is not always family money, right? But income is the money that's coming into me every week, every month, every year, right? Wealth is the amount of accrued value that I have, right? Okay. Sometimes from money I got from my family, sometimes money that I've earned, right? So like someone like Justin Bieber 10 years ago was an example of somebody with no wealth, but a lot of income, right? When he first started out, he was like, whatever, 10 years old when he first started out. He had no wealth, but lots of income, right? Now, since he's had income for so long, he's now accrued wealth. Does that make sense? You guys with me on that? Okay. So when we're talking about distribution of wealth, does the United States, how does the United States policies affect the distribution of wealth? What do you think, Mike?
Could we use redlining?
100% yes, you can. That's probably the answer I would give. So how does redlining affect the distribution of wealth?
It fixes like geographically and then income wise, it fixes people to a specific number or amount of wealth, and from that they're just poor.
So did redlining increase or decrease the African American wealth?
Decrease.
Mostly stayed the same, right? Mostly stayed the same or decreased it. Before redlining, about 5% of African Americans owned land. Today, about 10% own land, right? So policies like redlining are reinforcing the status quo of white wealth, right? Because it's keeping blacks from earning money and buying property, right? So in the United States, the government policy is affecting the distribution of wealth by maintaining the status quo, right? Okay, what do we think for South Africa? Let's answer the question for South Africa. Is the government policy increasing or decreasing the distribution of
Decreasing.
decreasing? Okay, what's your argument? Who was that, Raul?
Yeah, the Bantustans, kind of the same thing as redlining, but a lot more extreme,
Yep.
and decreasing the wealth of the native South African peoples.
Okay, yeah, either decreasing the wealth or keeping it low, right? Preventing it from growing, right? Okay, what else could you say? I think when you're talking about wealth, really what you got to talk about is property, right? The number one thing that contributes to wealth is property, right? That's the number one issue. And so that's why redlining or Bantustans are so good of an answers. What's our India answer? Josh, what's the India answer for this?
Like caste.
Sure. any policy having to do with Dalits, right? Right? Do any of the Indian policies towards Dalits actually help the Dalit situation very much? No, right? Right? The Dalits have not been meaningfully helped really at all. That most of the Indian policies, even the ones that so-called are reforms, aren't really solving the issue. They're mostly just keeping Dalits poor. All right, Ireland is the one that's a little bit different, right? Has the social policies, has the government policies changed the wealth distribution in Ireland? I think the
Well,
answer is yes. Yeah, go ahead, Ro.
they had those, I forgot what it was called, but those acts where basically the Catholics couldn't own land, so then they had to, they just didn't own any, all their income was going towards the rent rather than becoming their wealth.
And how's it different today?
Now the Catholics can own land.
And they do, right? In Ireland, who owns the most what land? Protestants or Catholics?
Catholics.
By a large margin, like 95% of the land is owned by Catholics now, right? So in Ireland, it 100% flipped. I think Ireland, we also have a lot of social safety net stuff that gets put in here, right? Stuff like pensions and employment insurance and health insurance and all these things. All of those are preserving the wealth of the Irish, right? So in that case, government policies are affecting the distribution of wealth in Ireland quite a bit, right? Ireland has a pretty robust social safety net, whereas the United States, South Africa, and India do not, right? And the United States, South Africa, and India also have significant portions of their population that are being held down by policies. Cool. All right, look through here. Let's say the nightmare scenario happens. You have to answer two, right? One from here, one from here, and you don't like any of them, right? Nightmare scenario. You can answer whatever you want, okay? You are not restricted to answering just the ones I taught you. This is your life. You can do what you want, okay? You can answer whatever you want. One of my 11th graders is popping in real quick. I'm gonna tell her her class is over. Okay, so if you look at some of these other ones, right? Could you guys answer 14 if you had to?
Probably for the US.
Absolutely, you could do it for the United States, or you could do it for Ireland. I think Ireland's a pretty easy one to do on this one, right? Let's see, could you answer number 13 if you had to?
South Africa makes sense for this one to me.
Okay, you have to have two countries. So South Africa's mining industries, right? And
Mm,
United States cotton, right? Again, that US South Africa combo is like a 1-2 combo that's going to come back over and over again, right? Yeah. What about, could you answer, let's see here. Could you answer 21 if you had to? Okay. What countries, what wars could you use that we've covered in my class? We've only covered 2 civil wars.
Irish Civil War.
Done. And the Second Boer War, right? What's the ideology attached to the Irish Civil War?
Full freedom versus loose, like 80% freedom.
Sure, right? the idea of nationalism and the limits of nationalism and stuff, right? What's the ideology attached to the Second Boer War? Afrikaner nationalism. I would also say the ideology of racial superiority, right? All right. What I want you to do is I want you to do number 1 by yourself, okay? This is the rights and protest prompts. The bell just rang, so I'm gonna have to go here pretty soon. Which of these sections did I choose?
4.
4, right? This one I think is the trickiest one. We're gonna spend time on this next class period, but what I want you to do next class period is I want you to actually take this test, okay? Just paper 1, just the first one. I want you to handwrite it on your own, and then we're gonna do it as a group and go over it, okay? I'll walk through the questions, and then I'll walk through how to grade it with you guys. But what you're gonna wanna do is you answer all of the questions in one section, okay? And all the questions in one section. Here's the trick. You have to time yourself. You only get an hour. This is why this one is a little bit tricky, because this is the short one, okay? You only get an hour, but if you look down here, I think you'll find that it's not that bad. Okay, so you read sources M and P, which is on the other PDF, right? And it's about the US Civil Rights Movement. This rights and protest will always be either US civil rights or African apartheid. It'll be one of the two, right? Or it could be both. So according to source M, there was resentment towards civil rights workers. Without even looking at the sources, you probably can answer a lot of these questions. Who is probably being resentful? Who is resenting whom? If we're talking about the US Civil Rights Movement and we're talking about these things, who is probably resenting whom?
African Americans are resenting the government and
No. No, that doesn't make sense. Would African Americans resent? I guess it kind of makes sense. But who would be resenting civil rights workers? Whites, Southern whites, right? They're resentful of civil rights workers telling them what to do, right? This one you can't do anything until you read it, right? But with here, origin, purpose, content, values, and limitations, every single test that they've ever given has this question on here. They pick one of the documents and you analyze the document just like you did on your IA. Okay. All right. Compare and contrast sources N, reveal about the consequences of Freedom Summer. Right. And then this is about the success of Freedom Summer. Evaluate the success of Freedom Summer. So what is Freedom Summer?
there was just a bunch of boycotts.
Nope. It was not that. What was the goal of Freedom Summer?
Wasn't it like to get everyone to vote or like to start voting?
Yep, it was a drive to get voter registration and voter turnout. In what state? Freedom Summer was in one state. What was it? Oh, your guys' spring break head brain is killing me. Mississippi. Was it successful? Not really.
Oh, okay, no.
Yeah, it was 2% of Black Mississippi registered to vote, and it raised it up to 4%, right? That is not that big of an increase, right? How were the Freedom Summer civil rights workers treated in Mississippi?
Agreed.
Very badly, right? 3 of them were assassinated and murdered, right? 3 of them were murdered and a lot of them were attacked and shot at and firebombed and stuff, right? Okay, So compare and contrast sources N and P about Freedom Summer. One is probably going to talk about the consequences being successful, and one will probably say not successful, right? We haven't even looked at the sources, and I think you can already crack it, right? And here, evaluate the success of Freedom Summer. You're going to evaluate how successful it was, and you're free to go ahead and use N and P for that. Okay? It's like a DBQ for the AP exam, except it's not like an asshole, right? The DBQs for the AP exam, you have to use 7 documents, and you have to put all 7 of them into an essay, right? This is not like that. This is asking you to do them one at a time separately, right? Okay, are we clear, everybody? I want you to handwrite this, and label it 13A, 13B, 14, 15, 16, right? Label it in there, handwrite it. It should be a couple of pages long, okay? These two should be like 1 or 2 sentences each. This one would be like a good paragraph, and then these two would both be like a half a page each, something like that, like a big paragraph each, okay? If you can, write more, but time yourself because you need to be under that 60 minutes. That's why this one is a little tricky. Cool?
So for this paper one, we just choose one section and then answer all the questions that are in that section,
Correct.
and that's it?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And then, so it has two PDFs there. One has the questions and then one has all the readings in it, right? So, cool. Do that, have that ready so that we can go over it and we can grade it as a group on, cool? Are you guys good? Do you guys feel less anxiety about the test?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty friendly, right? The test is a relatively friendly test, I think. Like I do not think there's a lot of curveballs in here. I have another test that we're going to use and stuff too, and I think that you'll find that these tests are all really very similar in a lot of ways, right? They have really open-ended questions where you are supposed to just kind of show off everything you know. And it's not like an AP exam where they're trying to like riddle me this, try to guess this, 363rd thing that I put on the list, right? Like it's not like that. It's not that kind of a test. Cool? All right. I'll see you guys. Have a good day, everybody.
Right. See ya.
We-